Hello, everyone. So I tweeted earlier saying that I am avoiding all of the things that I need to get accomplished within the next week and a half. And instead, I'm watching YouTube videos, which is true. And one of the videos that I was watching was someone doing the my firsts tag, which is basically a tag where you say like my first this, my first that. It's like all of the first things that you did. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna film one because I want to. So let's get started. So the first question of the my first tag is what was your first tweet? And actually, I found that you can figure this out through this internet site. It's called discover.twitter.com. So it must be part of Twitter. And it's kind of a long story, but essentially this isn't actually my first real tweet because when I was younger, like some things happened and basically like my parents took away my internet privileges. So I actually had Twitter for a while, like secretly, and then I had to like close the account because they found out about it. And so like this is like the reopening of my account first tweet. And it says, "Hey all, smiley face, welcoming myself to Twitter, hashtag newbie." So that was my first sort of tweet. What was your first YouTube video? Oh my gosh, I've actually made YouTube videos in some form or another for quite some time. I make some on just like my regular email Google account now. And then I used to have an account called I Am So In on YouTube, and I actually had an account before that too. But I'm not actually, I think I actually do remember. I think I was like 16 at the time, and I made a video about um, Kim Kardashian when she was married to Chris Humphries, which I don't know if you remember that. That was in like 2011. Like the champagne from her wedding. Um, Someone made this meme where like the champagne for her wedding could feed like I don't know hundreds of like hungry children around the world, and I made this video about like classism essentially. That was my first video. Who was the first person you subscribed to on YouTube? I think The Amazing Atheist was probably actually the first person. I didn't have an official YouTube account, but that was the person like I kind of like sought out his videos. Um, I actually hate him now because at the time I was really into atheism and like studying religion and stuff. And I was an atheist, but now like he's kind of an MRA and sort of a troll and just really kind of annoying, so I don't like him anymore. But it's kind of funny because that was like the first person I really like watched on YouTube. Um, what was the first Facebook profile picture? Again, I'm actually not sure because I had like this Facebook, like kind of secret Facebook for a while, and I know it wasn't like my picture. I think it was actually a picture of my dog because I had to make sure it wasn't my picture so my parents wouldn't find it. And they actually never did find that. They never found my Facebook account. Do you still talk to your first love? No, we do not talk anymore. For many reasons, and a lot of that just goes back to the fact that our relationship wasn't the most like appropriate. So I don't think it's healthy for us to talk. We actually talked as recently as like a year ago though, so like we did keep in touch sort of for a while. What was your first alcoholic drink? Let me think. Oh, I actually do know this. So, when I was in Mexico, I was on Mexico on vacation when I was about 14. Yeah, I was 14 years old with my parents and my family, and the hotel we were staying at had like an open bar and stuff like by the pool, and so I got um, pina coladas, but my parents thought I was getting like virgin drinks. But I actually had some real pina coladas. Um, so yeah, so that would have to be my first. What was your first job? Ooh, okay, so like my first kind of official quote unquote job was working at TJ Maxx when I was 17. But I sort of had jobs before that because I had other things I was doing making money. Like I did this sort of like youth media program when I was like 16, and I actually got paid to do that and a couple other things sort of. So I actually sort of had jobs before that. What was your first car? I actually don't drive, so I don't have a first car. Who was the first person to text you today? That would be my friend Jamie, who I was going to go shopping with, and she ended up having to cancel. So she texted me this morning to tell me. Who was the first person you thought of this morning? Ooh, good question. Probably my ex-boyfriend, if I'm gonna be like completely honest. Um, yeah. Who was your first grade teacher? Her name was Mrs. Ryder. She was actually great. She was a great teacher, and I remember really liking her. Where did you go on your first ride on an airplane? I went to Disney World when I was 3 years old with my parents. So that's Florida, and so I lived in Ohio. I still do live in Ohio. So like Ohio to Florida. So it wasn't that long of a flight, but I actually do sort of remember it a little bit. Who is your first best friend and do you still talk? So my first best friend was Casey. I was friends with her when I was like 3 or 4 years old. We went to preschool together, which was how I knew her. And her grandma actually lived down the street from where I lived, and she was at her grandma's house a lot. So we hung out and played all the time. And we don't still talk. Because I moved actually when I was 5 because my parents got divorced, and so this was like pre-internet, and plus I was like 5, so we couldn't really keep in touch because I moved sort of far from that, like an hour away. So, um, yeah, and we actually met each other again. Like I saw her when I was in like 7th grade, when I was like 13ish. I saw her again. And we sort of had a little reunion, but after that, I haven't seen her or talked to her. What was your first sleepover? I was trying to remember this, and I don't. I don't remember my first sleepover. I know it was definitely at the house I'm living at now, my mom's house that I moved into when I was like 6. It wasn't before that. My mom was always really strict about sleepovers. Part of it was because she worked at the school that I went to, so I think it was like awkward for her, because a lot of the people that I wanted to have sleep over were like people that she knew from school, and even had as students at some point. Not when I was that really young, but like a little bit later. And also, I don't know, she's just like really kind of paranoid about stuff like that. She always felt like she was super responsible, and like something bad would happen or something, it would be her fault. So she was always really strict about sleepovers. So I don't actually remember, but I know I was probably like 6 or 7. Um, what was the first thing you did this morning? Let me think. This morning, the first thing I did, I think, was go on and check my email. I'm pretty sure that was the first thing. Um, what was the first concert you went to? When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I went to see Clay Aiken. I don't know if you know who he is. He was on American Idol long, long time ago, and I was a huge fan. I had a crush on him. So I think it's kind of ironic that he ended up being gay, but I had a huge crush on him. And I went actually with my mom, my adopted mom, and my birth mom. I'm adopted. To see him. And I remember being really scared that like the sound would like blow my ears out and like make me deaf or something. And obviously it didn't happen. And it was Clay Aiken. It's not like I was going to see like the Rolling Stones or something like crazy. So kind of an irrational fear, but that was the first concert that I went to. What was your first broken bone? Actually, I didn't break a bone until like a few months ago. So I used to be like, I've never broken a bone, but I have now. Um, it's actually a really funny story. My ex-boyfriend, who I was with at the time, this was in like August. I we well okay, so basically we were staying at a hotel, and the hotel had an there was like an issue where like had we were out, and then we went back to the room, and we had gone shopping, and so we were planning on like dropping my stuff off and then leaving just so we wouldn't have to carry it around. So we went back to the room, and we noticed the door was like ajar, And we were really freaked out because we knew we had closed the door. So we were like, oh my God, somebody broke into the room. So we went into the room. Everything was fine though. Everything was like exactly as it was. Nothing appeared to be missing or even touched. But we were still a little bit freaked out, because we were like, what's wrong with the door? Was someone in our room? So we called the front desk and we're like, told them the situation. And they were like, we're going to send someone up to check on the door in a few minutes. And so we're like, okay. So it's kind of awkward just because we were planning on leaving like short, we were just gonna go in and go out. So we were trying to figure out like what should we do for these couple minutes or whatever. So naturally, I wanted to like have sex, and he was like, no, like because of the maintenance person that was coming, and so we were like making out or whatever. And I was like, let me just put on this like lingerie outfit for you. I just bought in these beautiful like crystal like wedges, and I cannot walk in heels. I'm not somebody that can do that. I haven't owned many heels in my life even. I also have flat feet and wide feet, which prevents me from wearing a lot of shoes in the first place. So heels are even harder because they tend to make them a lot more narrow. So I decided to get them anyway. So I put them on with like this little bra and like crotchless thong. And so I did this whole little like thing for him. And literally, I was like walking. He was sitting in a chair, and I was like walking up to him. And literally, I was one step away from him, and I fell flat on my face. I just fell. And basically, from that, I broke my toe. I broke like my fourth toe on my finger, like right before my pinky touched, like this toe, but on my foot. Um, from that. And I didn't know at the time, and it actually took me about 2 or 3 weeks to figure out I broke it, but it really hurt and it was bad. But I think it's a pretty funny story actually. Okay, so what was your first piercing? My ears. When I was maybe 5 or 6, I actually took out the earrings though, and I had my ears pierced like 3 other times. And the last time I had them pierced, my ears, because every time they would get like infected, so I'd have to take out the earrings. And then the last time, um, my ear got so swollen that the back of my earring literally got stuck inside of my earlobe. So I had to like go and have like basically medical doctors take out my earring, and they figured out I have a metal allergy, so then I can never get my ears pierced. And so I have no piercings as of now. What was the first foreign country you've gone to? So that would be Canada. I went with my mom and my grandparents to Niagara Falls when I was like, I think like 5 or 6. What was the first movie you remember seeing? Ooh. The first movie I actually probably remember like seeing in the theaters was Monsters Inc. I think I was like 5. And oh my gosh, like I was so freaked out. I was so scared after seeing that movie. And I saw it with my dad at the time because my parents had just recently split up. And I saw it with my dad. And then I was so scared. I was having nightmares. I couldn't sleep. My mom was like so furious with him because it literally took me like 2 weeks to be able to like go to sleep after that. So yeah. um, what was your first detention? When I was in my first like official detention, well, like when I was in middle school, because I went to like a really small Christian school, um, like K through 8th grade, and so we didn't have like official detention and stuff just because it was such a small school. But when I was in 6th grade, I was kind of acting out, and I would have to like stay in a lot of times for lunch and recess and write sentences. I had a teacher that like that was your punishment. You had to like write a sentence of like the bad thing that you did. Like I won't talk out of turn, for example. You'd have to write that like 100 times, and I had to do that a lot. So that was sort of like detention. And then, but my first like official where it was called detention, I was a sophomore in high school. It was a really funny story. Because at the time I actually had just started going to community college, and I was doing a lot of school because I was going to like regular high school all day, and then afterward, 2 nights a week, and then actually also on Saturday, I went to community college. And one of the classes, I was doing 2 classes at the time, and one of the classes I did was like an English class, like an English 101 class. And I remember I had forgotten that we had to like do this homework assignment, and I hadn't done it, and I was like, oh no, and I wasn't gonna have time to do it before the class. So I ended up skipping my last two classes of school to do this assignment. So I went to the library and was like working on the assignment. I remember it was like halfway through, so like after one of the classes, my guidance counselor actually came into the library and asked like why I wasn't in class. And I was like really shocked just because like A, how did my guidance counselor know I was even supposed to like be in class during this time? And like B, like why did she come look for me here? I don't know. And so, I was just like not really even sure what to say. And she just kind of left, and then I guess she called my parents and like all this stuff. And so basically from that I got detention. I actually got a Saturday school, and because I had a class on Saturday, I had a college class on a Saturday, and I remember it was like a day I could not miss of that class. So I could only do like half the Saturday school, and then I had to like do a couple detentions instead to like make up the time. It was a really harsh punishment because I had never like gotten in trouble at all before that. It was probably like supposed to scare me or whatever. The funny part was like I loved it because I was really into reading, and so I just read my books during the summer school or Saturday school detention. I was like, who cares? It's fine. It's really not a big deal. My parents were like furious because I think they wanted me to like be upset about it. I was like, I'm not really that upset. So that was that story. Who's your first roommate? I actually haven't had like an official roommate. My stepsister and I, when I lived at my dad's house, we had shared a room for a while, so that would probably be my first roommate. But that was my only roommate. What was the first sport you were involved in? Probably gymnastics. When I was about 3 years old, I was in gymnastics for about a year. What is the first thing you do when you get home? Usually it's like take off my shoes and like change into like comfortable clothes. That's usually like the first thing. If I'm home like for the entire rest of the day. If I'm not home for the rest of the day, I usually will go on my computer. Um, when was your first kiss? Oh my gosh, this is such an embarrassing story. I was actually really old. I was like 17. So that's like pretty old for a first kiss. Um, so basically the story is that I was at actually a youth conference. So it was a conference designed for high schoolers. So I and a bunch of other people were in New York City for a few days for this conference. And we were all staying together in dorms. And so like the last night of the conference, like the last night, because like then the next day it was like the end of it. So like that night we all like met up in someone's room, and basically we were like playing spin the bottle. And that was how I had my first kiss, and it was like kind of not a big deal, but I was actually kind of relieved because I just kind of wanted to get it over with at that point, especially being so old. Because most people had their first kiss when they're like 12 or 13. So that is my story, and that's the last question. So if you watched all this, you're awesome, and thank you, and I will talk to you later.